Oh my goodness. Vatira, is this your best player in Europe? I got called out by Jorias for not. Here we go. So in the recent Fall Cup for Rocket League, we had an amazing second regional in Europe where KCorp and Quadrant made it to the final. I think KCorp had a little bit of an easier run making it there in the way they performed. Quadrant scraping through against Vitality in the quarterfinals. Quadrant had to beat Tundra, which was definitely one of the easier matchups you could have. Tundra not playing that well in this tournament. Vitality, though, pushed them right to the limit, going to Game 7 overtime. On the other side, KCorp, to be fair, BDS was a tough match, but KCorp seemed to have the number of the top teams right now. Only struggling in Swiss, where they struggled against G1. Actually, they lost to Moist in Swiss, so got their revenge. But yeah, this is a grueling task to make it through in 5 games. And I definitely think it gives you a little bit of momentum going into the quarterfinals and semis as a team, where if you go 3-0, you can get a little bit too comfortable, some teams. And obviously in this situation, it did just work out, unfortunately, for KCorp, where they come up against BDS in the first round. This could have very easily been a final right here. Algeria, fair play, making top 8. Hopefully they find an org soon. But yeah, KCorp versus Moist. We're seeing this matchup quite a lot now. We got it in the first regional, got it in the Swiss, and then we got it again here. But yeah, KCorp just looks so good in the bracket stage. You know, 4-2, 4-1, 4-2. And it's not just that, they look like a stronger team. You know, not dropping many goals, but scoring lots of goals, right? It's only this game where they conceded a lot, but yeah, they seem to have a good game plan where they should score a few goals per game and barely concede any, right? And that's the key to a well-structured team, is one that can win by scoring 3 and conceding 0. That makes sense, right? Like that's their target each game. We take 3 chances a game, which will often result in like 1 or 2, but we don't concede any, which will often result in maybe 1 or 2. Then when it comes to the game itself, let's have a little look here at the stats. You can see Vatira pretty good on the stat front. In fact, all the players looking pretty good on the stat front. Just a few more shots per game from KCorp. You can see quite a high shooting percentage from everybody involved. Itachi tends to go for assists more, tends to go for the outplays rather than going for the goals, so he doesn't get a good shooting percentage but has good assists. Bumps are all pretty standard. This is just like typical rotation out style bumps. Cash is quite hard to bump because he rotates out really fast and gets quite far away from the play, so he doesn't get bumped that often. Then let's look at boost. All pretty standard here. I'd say Itachi and Ixo play a similar role of where they don't rotate out the play as much. They look to just stay and be a nuisance in the middle. So the average boosts are going to be a little bit lower, and they're not going to get as many hundreds normally because they'll stick around a little bit longer, maybe go for a low boost intercept and 50-50, that kind of vibe. But, you know, the boost per minute for everybody is pretty standard. Average amounts are all pretty standard. Exotic a little bit low, but fine. Small pads are pretty low across the board. I feel like small pad usage could be a little bit better. But yeah, otherwise, everything's looking pretty even, which is similar to what we saw with the V1 Gen G movement and boost stats, is it was pretty standard across the board. I think once you're having a good day as a team, you'll have pretty efficient movement, because that's what's really important right now in Rocket League. Yeah, you can see here Itachi forward quite a lot, and not most back, but like you can see that he's the least back, not the most forward, right? Yeah, Vatira is the most forward, but he's the least back, which is the important thing. He doesn't rotate back very often. He hovers in the play, where Vatira and Exotic sort of play third/forward a lot. Itachi is often in the middle of the group, right? Because he tends to stick in the play. Ixo is a similar-ish, but like on a lesser extent. You see Relating Wave and Cash both rotate back, but Cash tends to be either furthest forward or furthest back, doesn't really hover in that midfield much, right? He wants to be aggressively upfield doing things or aggressively last saving things, right? He's in the most important 2 positions, leaving the decision-making stuff up to Ixo a bit more. Movement, average speeds, look, again, we mentioned about efficiency. It's a pretty efficient lobby. No one moving super fast or super slow. Wave tends to be a little bit slower off the ball just because he reads the play quite a lot. Grounded stats, there's no one really extreme except for Vatira, who's quite high, but I don't think this is because he's aerialing a lot. I think this is because he has a similar habit to what KDOP does, which is where he spends a lot of time in low air because he dodges around the pitch a lot. Because you can see here, despite having the lowest grounded stat, he doesn't have the highest high air stat. So he's actually in the low air range quite a lot, which means that's where you do a lot of dodging, a lot of like jumping, wave dashing and things like that. So Vatira, this stat doesn't necessarily represent his groundedness. So the stats actually, interestingly, normal. There's not many anomalies, and any of the anomalies can be put down to a playstyle difference. Like we said, Ixo and Itachi both having lower boost amounts, tending to go for less big pads, tending to be the middle player a bit more, which is to try and be that disruptor role a bit more and support role a bit more. But yeah, it's very interesting how all of the anomalies relate to playstyle only. So let's have a little look. Let's start off with that first game of the final. So I'm going to go on board with Itachi just to sort of follow on from what we're talking about there, about his being in the middle of the pitch style of play. You can see here, a lot of his decisions are about getting the ball back to his team. I'd say Itachi right now is one of the best players I've seen for getting the ball back to his teammates, right? Like in this occasion, it didn't quite work, but you can see what his idea is, right? He's on lowish boost. So his idea is if I come up to this and 50-50, it'll go towards Vatira, right? He was trying to sort of push that in the direction of Vatira. He knows where Vatira is, trying to get to Vatira. Then he'll come back and try and come in and support. So he's coming in here looking to support the team. Just always looking to play. It's almost like playing around his teammates in like a twos environment. Rotate out nice and fast. Do you see here? Do you see how the instinct here was different to most players? What do you guys notice about his instinct of movement being different to most players? We've got to make sure we get the right boost amount here. So after this play here, what I'm trying to say is he's not just instantly going to the nearest 100 that's available, right? Right here. So at this point here, let's stop. And let's have a look. He's just rotated back from over here. He wanted to go pad, 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 right? That was the line he wanted to take, but he did narrowly just miss out on the pads here, here, and here. But the point is that was the route he's trying to take. Why would he be looking to take this route? Well, it's because as they get to this position here, can either go back and get this to support in defense, or can turn upfield and get this boost here to support upfield, right? But rather than making that decision from here, committing like over in this area here, remains on that neutral path via the pads to be able to, if at this point, say, Vatira's under pressure, can then come in via the pads, right? So it's that movement pattern that gets Itachi into what I call neutral positions. I mentioned this in my Change Your Understanding of Rocket League Forever video. I mentioned this a little bit there. And it's those positions where you can branch into many different directions, you know? Like at this point here, if the support was needed, he could go that way, right? If the support was needed this way, he could go that way. So there's just loads of different routes you can take along that way that Itachi is opening up by going via the pads. And obviously, he'd rather get the 100. So at this position here, once he gets into this sweet spot here, decides to go for the 100. But if in this situation needed to go back, would be comfortable just going back via the pads. So it just allows for decisions to be made constantly throughout the movement. And what we'll notice here, if we go back into the play, goes to that 100, is then looking to support Exotic. So constantly looking to support teammates at the priority of going out of the play to get boost. So you see again, in this position here, what's his goal? What's he trying to do? Itachi's trying to get the ball back to his team, right? Always looking to intercept this ball, frustrate the opponents, and get it back to a teammate. And in this situation, he's very creative with it. And you can see in this situation, I think he actually just bumped Ixo off the ball, and that allowed Vatira to go get it. So you see here, looking to come up and support Vatira in this situation. Looking to come in and support Exotic. Just try to take up time to allow teammates to recover. There was actually someone who came in earlier and asked about second man positioning. And I think, genuinely, I think Itachi is one of the best second positions in the game. It's the same mindset as what we've mentioned before. Just, he sums it up perfectly with his decisions and what he goes for. Da, da, da. The only thing I would say is lacking for his second person positioning is execution when teammates get him the ball in strong positions. A little bit off on the shooting front, but it's because Itachi errs on the side of caution, right? See again here? You see how in this situation, right? Rotating back. How do I get this ball back to my teammates? Just send it out of Cash's control towards the back corner. Teammates are allowed to go get hundreds if they want over him because they are priority. Okay, this is a bit on Vatira and Exotic here. Yeah, Exotic just getting a weird touch there. And like... Exotic just got a little bit lost in the sauce on the corner there. A lot of similarities between Itachi and Extra. I think Itachi is a little bit more creative on the front, where Extra's a little bit more rigid in the way he does it, which is still good. It's just he does it in a little bit more of a standardized way. Like, Extras are probably a lot easier for the average Joe to watch and understand. Itachi is utilizing some creative challenge mechanics, and like you saw his bump, like his little pogo bump that he did. Yeah, let's have a little watch of the other guys on KC. Just going to watch KC right here just to understand them. And we'll give Quadrant a bit of love, because Quadrant are definitely doing some great things as well. Ixo's car is an interesting mess. Yeah, I mean, Quadrant are playing well here, right? They're putting pressure on. Good speed, good mechanics, good execution. Fair play, Quadrant. So you see here, right? Itachi's set of tools as a second person is very unique. He's got challenge game, got support to read off of teammates' touches. That's your typical second person decision making, right? Is the situation where your teammate does well, you're going to be there to provide the next touch. When you haven't got the ball, you're going to be there to try and get it off of your opponents based off of the first person rotating back, right? So you almost become a first person challenging as a second person. But when in this position, what Itachi's mindset is more around breaking down the opposition whilst trusting Exotic and Vatira to stick behind the ball and just do what's needed to get possession on the ball. So he's able to go for those bump runs, the boost steals, and things like that. But yeah, it's all about the recovery speed, knowing when you don't need to recover super fast, right? Really nice here. So look. Itachi supporting, just behind Exotic. Comes in, second person, very nicely done. But you can see it's not super finessey, right? They don't look good. They don't look clean with their movement. But the game plan and the structure is there. It's just... Is that the pogo bump? I didn't even see that. I've seen the clip of it, but I didn't see it on that occasion. Oh yeah, that's the pogo bump. We saw it from Cash's point of view. A little bit lucky, let's be honest. But good adjustment in that moment. Because I was focusing on Itachi there. I didn't see Exotic, but yeah. Like, Exotic, first person, that's his strongest position in the team. Is being upfield, trying to break him down, doing something creative, that kind of thing. On the ball. And then Itachi coming in, supporting. You can see it a little bit sort of swaying in the air. It's a bit too egotistical. I mean, egotistical is just the self-confidence overdone a little bit, right? Like, arrogance and ego is just self-confidence when done to the extreme a little bit. It can be a negative thing, but I think in Vatira's case, he's one of the best right now, and he knows it. And I think it's kind of fine in that sense. Ixo, bit scared of the good shot here from Itachi. So pre-jumped it. I can understand why the pre-jump came out. Yeah, interesting Itachi shooting low. That's very rare you see a player at this level shooting low there. But I think it's just self-confidence. Like, self-confidence is just arrogance where it's acceptable, right? Like, for some reason, arrogance and self-confidence. It's just like self-confidence is tasteful arrogance, and arrogance is distasteful self-confidence, right? It's just opinion-based when you believe it's overdone. I mean, Cash had to get a touch on that, otherwise it's a goal. It's just unfortunate how it goes down. But anyway, let's have a little look at Quadrant this game. So obviously we were speaking very highly of KC in the last game. And I think one thing to note is that I didn't speak that highly of individual execution, except for Vatira. I think he executed very well in that first game. Across this weekend, I think KC's execution could be improved, right? There was times where I looked at them and I was like, they're not quite hitting their touches and things like that. But one thing that's fair to say is they have a very consistent game plan. And one where the game plan can be enough to win them games, right? And we've spoken about that. That's Itachi's supportive positioning, Vatira playing off the ball, keeping boost nice and high, and being an amazing third who also, if given the ball, has a lot of deadly touches. And Exotic can be a bit of like a disruptive, fast mechanical player. And I think between the three of them, they can all flow around each other pretty well. But they were up against Quadrant, who also, in my opinion, have one of the best game plans in RLCS right now, and equally don't execute as well as some other teams would expect. But I think it's fair to say that is improving, and I think it's one of those where we'll see the improvement in these players as time goes on, right? That's an experience thing that comes with this game plan being second nature. It comes with confidence. It comes with practice, it comes with time, and so on. And I think both these teams have solid game plans, and I mentioned it when we watched Quadrant in the first regional, is they have a solid game plan, they just lack a little bit of the on-the-ball creativity. Whereas what we saw in particular from Relating Wave and EXO was an improvement in that creativity and execution. Like right there, that's like a whole different Relating Wave from last week. Just speed, execution, great shooting. So you can see right here, Quadrant creating goals, which is important. This is so nice. You know we said about the creativity? Like, look here. EXO off the ceiling. Cash reading that so fast. And, like, we know Cash can double anything. Especially Dominus Cash doubles anything. Modern Rocket League rarely has one-touch players, right? Most people would rather have multiple touches. And by going for these bump challenges where you get the player off the ball, it means that your teammates can trust the touch. And I assume they communicate it as well, right? Like, I'm assuming in this situation, EXO communicates he's bumping, right? And in that way, Wave can play off of the bump and know that it's only going to be one touch. And your recovery is better than your opponent. And so, yeah, it was huge in the Vitality series. It's been a bit harder to do against KC across the series, just because the way KC move is a little bit tougher. But yeah, you can see they're much more willing to go for these bump challenges than most teams. I think we'll skip now the rest of this game because we've reached its climax a little bit. So we'll go into this next one, the Quadrant one. Quadrant win here. Let's have a little watch of Cash for a bit. So Cash and Sazen, both Dominus players in the Vitality Quadrant game. It was nice to see Dominus being used at the higher level. I think it really does suit Cash a lot. And he was saying on the CJ show that he doesn't really use Dominus most of the time. He saves it for tournament days, which is a really interesting way to do it, right? Like, he grinds ranked in Octane and then comes into a tournament day and is switched over to the Dominus. But yeah, you can see it's so good for these little redirect touches, for the double touching, just general aerial play. But yeah, the Quadrant mindset around not having the ball is unique compared to a lot of teams, right? So when we're going for a challenge, where on the pitch are your teammates generally? Generally, when you're going for a challenge, where on the pitch are your teammates? I've asked this question loads of times before on stream. Infield and behind, exactly. So the way they're challenging is knowing that if they control the situation by either 50-50ing it backwards a bit, forcing it, or going for the bump on the player, it will get the ball to the teammates behind them whilst also giving you a quick recovery speed, right? So you see right here with Cash, comes in, controls the 50-50, recovers fast, and it goes straight to the teammate behind. Admittedly, Wave doesn't quite get the follow-up touch. Vatira reads it. But this is where Quadrant's game plan is focused around bump challenging, forcing, faking, 50-50ing it sideways / backwards. And then that's how they break teams down, and then that's when they can start being a bit more creative. So they've got a good neutral game plan right now, where they don't tend to lose many interactions. Most interactions go pretty neutral. So you see even there, like Cash is fine losing that interaction. So he goes into a position where he can recover nice and quickly. So it's just that mindset around going in for a challenge and knowing that if you get beaten, you've got the teammates behind you for it. Again there, nice little fake challenge. And the advantage you got with this is you can call it early. So you can call a fake challenge or a force or a bump early. And then look at how much it's conditioned them, right? It's conditioned them to just hit it early to try and win those challenges. And Itachi hits that straight into Cash. Beautiful little 50-50 from Cash. This is something that's really hard to do in ranked. It's hard to do with random people. It's something you sort of have to do as like a game plan with friends, you know? So like Demox, one of my friends who I play ranked with, me and him do this quite a lot because, you know, he knows that I like to go for fake challenges and forces and things like that. And you can see right here, Quadrant are doing a similar kind of thing. But if you do this with a random in ranked, they'll be like, why didn't you go? You know? So it's going to be a tough one to do in that situation. Look, you see right here. Look at the EXO challenge here, right? Got the bump. You see that? Like, he knows in this situation, he's just forcing it, collecting the boost and going back, right? Cash does a similar thing where he's willing to lose the interaction because he knows Wave's behind him, right? Low boost challenge, quick recovery speed, back in the play, right? So Quadrant have got an amazing neutral game right now. That's good little play by Itachi to take Wave out for free. But EXO does well solo defending. Yep, there we go. This is what we spoke about, the bump challenging. Not even focusing on the ball at all, just focusing on the player. So this is something they've brought into their game. And I know Cash on the CJ show mentioned that they've just worked something out that's amazing for them. And I wonder if the bump challenging was that thing. I don't know if he'll ever even be able to confirm that. But it was the one big thing I noticed as a difference for them. It was very unique in style. But yeah, their neutral game is definitely one to watch for a lot of other teams to understand and see what they're doing well. Really nice challenge there. So this situation's a little bit dodgy, right? So you can see this situation right here. Why is this situation a little bit dodgy? Yeah, so this situation is pretty dodgy, and the reason being, Cash has provided 0 value as the first. Right? Hits the ball over here. Provided 0 value on Exotic. To be fair, Exotic is very deceptive with this movement, so fair play. But Cash has provided 0 value as first, so now they're technically defending 3v2. Now, the problem with 3v2 defending is you're very susceptible to getting bumped, and also, you know, 1v2 outplays aren't that difficult, so one player can outplay 2 people. And right here, what ends up happening is Wave actually gets bumped as EXO went in for that challenge. So EXO obviously had to choose, do I just rush early, or do I play it safer here? And if he played it safer, they probably would have conceded. So I think EXO chose correctly in the end. He just recognized Exotic didn't have full control. And technically, you could say Cash forced him. Right? Technically, you could say Cash forced him here by being present. Right? Like, Cash in this situation has technically forced Exotic infield. So that's where EXO pushed towards that plan. But had Exotic flicked early here, then this would have been a goal. So they're on the edge of conceding with this decision-making here. But then this is Rocket League, you have to take risks sometimes. And here the risk is that they found themselves in this situation because Cash has made an error with his first person challenging. And then consequently, Ixo has to flip a coin and go, do I challenge early or play it safe? And he goes for the challenge early, and it kind of works out, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get broken down here. Because that demo comes in. Now, Cash has to get the intercept. So Cash has to get this intercept, which he doesn't. And now it's getting a bit sketchy as the team is uncomfortable. And like, you can see the boost right now. Cash is the only player with boost. Wave just picked it up. But yeah, Ixo is hovering in the middle of the pitch. Again. So you see the difference here between Ixo and Itachi as a second person, right? Like, Ixo has played phenomenally well. And I think we can all agree Ixo is now looking like a much stronger player on this team. Fits the team really well. But you can see the difference when we're watching Itachi versus watching Ixo in terms of the read of the play and the execution rate from Ixo is a little bit weaker than that of Itachi. And you can see right here, this is a must-block challenge for Ixo. Otherwise, they might concede. And as you see, what ends up happening is he doesn't get that block. And so this is just... Ixo's too low on boost here, right? If you're going to be that supportive player, you need to have a little bit more boost than this. And we can probably come back to various moments in the past where boost management was a bit off. You know, right here. Just didn't boost towards that boost. Would have been fine, but it's a good boost star from Exotic. And then this is just good from Vatira as well, to be fair. So a combination of fair play on KC, Exotic boost star, Vatira outplay, good stuff. But this has put a lot of pressure on Ixo's back for this particular challenge, as he was Relating Waves challenge here. Exotic avoids that bump. And do you guys remember one of the top tips I mentioned for Com as a bump player? And how one of the best ways to actually counter people bumping is to bump. And this is exactly why, right? Relating Wave has gone for the bump run. All it takes is one player to be beaten, and then the bump is then instantly open in a 2v1 situation, right? So yeah, there's a few interesting interactions that happen there. I think Ixo, as this second supportive person, needs to make sure he makes slightly stronger decisions at times. But again, a lot of it is not necessarily on him. It'll be on other things going on around him. And also, fair play to KC because the way they broke them down there through Exotic's boost steal, through Vatira's touch, Vatira's patience, it all kind of added up. But like you can see right now, Quadrant are breaking themselves down a little bit more than we saw from KC. So you can see how when Ixo or Itachi gets down to 0, it's a massive disadvantage for their teams. Because they're playing very similar roles right now in their teams. And if either of them gets down to 0, their team can be on the back foot quite quickly. Because, you know, they're both there disrupting in the midfield. So if either of them get down to 0, it's actually a massive factor as to what's the pressure that's about to happen. He waited for the boost to spawn. And then went. Oh my goodness. Vatira. Is this your best player in Europe? They're willing to hold a Rule 1 until they've had enough? Let's have a look. Let's look at the final game here. Yeah, the reason why that final little 30 seconds was a little bit different. Obviously, we had a few weird interactions. One, we had a Rule 1. 2, we had a team that was up by 1 goal and a team that was down by 1 goal, obviously. And that team that was down by 1 goal was trying to force a goal a little bit. So boost management starts to go a little bit out of the window at that point because you just try everything you can. When you're presented with a goal scoring opportunity, you try and go for it. And it's a little bit more panicked. Yeah, Vatira sits on 100 for a lot more. And then when he's in, he gets out nice and quick, right? So he comes in, uses 100, gets out nice and quick. Itachi, much more happy, hovering around different boost amounts. Exotic as well, to a certain extent. And, like, this is something that I mentioned about teams like Moist. Their boost management is something that they haven't quite worked out yet, like how each of them manage their boost around each other. Because Vatira's got pretty good boost management overall. Like, he doesn't waste much boost. Where Astral wastes quite a lot of boost moving around the pitch. And so Rise and Joyo are going to have to change up the way they do their boost management a little bit. Hey, Matt, thank you very much for the subscription. Appreciate you, bud. You see that whole period of time where Itachi was in the air? That whole period of time where Itachi's in the air right here. If we fly side on, you can just see the spacing between him and the ball is always going to be favourable. So Ixo has to try and predict that. And it's a lot harder for him to predict that situation. So yeah, it's just beautiful space taking up from Itachi to get him closer to the net there. Like right here, he's going up fast. He probably heard no one was up, right? This is probably a comms thing. I got called out by Jorias for not referencing communication in my analysis. Unfortunately, I don't know what they're saying, but my assumption is that Itachi is told no one's up or time or something, so then he changes to go for a slower play. Does that make sense? So that's could be a comms thing. It could just be a good like fake by Itachi into a good read. I don't know, but like he's very intentionally gone up fast, then changed his decision on the way. Great 50 from Vatira. Again, Itachi very patient here. You can see like in this situation, off that 50-50, just gives Exotic the time to move into place. And then obviously Wave in defense has to try and read what's coming out. Sees Itachi go up, has to back off, can't read the intercepts, has to try and predict the shot. Itachi takes his time very nicely because he puts himself in a position where he knows when he needs to go, right? Like he's close enough to the ball that he can wait to that right moment to go for it. So this was the kickoff strat that they went for. So you can see here, Quadrant have gone for a kickoff strat. Let's have a little breakdown of this. We haven't seen many Spanish kickoffs in RLCS. Interesting. So in this situation, is it better for Ixo to leave this, I wonder? Probably not still. Especially if they don't trust the system, because they've probably not practiced it a huge amount. I would say here, if Ixo gets that mid boost instead, that's a better movement for it, because that ice. So the whole advantage of a bump kickoff, right? Hang on, let's have a look up from above, right? So the whole idea of the bump kickoff in twos, obviously there's a third player in this. We've got Itachi down here, which adds another player to it. But the whole idea is you get the bump here, so that will respawn on either side. So that's where one of your opponents is going to be. The kickoff taker should get isolated in your opponent's half. So in this situation, they'll land somewhere around here. Then they can either choose to grab this boost here, which will send them really far away from where the ball's going, or they can rotate back via pads to get back faster, or in this situation, they're able to get that mid boost, and then that will get them back faster, right? So this player is isolated. The difference in threes, though, is you've then got this third player who has 100 boost and is sat deep. So they can deal with the ball as it's in the air. So that's where the typical bump kickoff strategy in twos would work, right? Like if Ixo did this in twos, they'd have scored a goal. Whereas you've got that third player to worry about. So in this situation, Itachi goes for the ball, and that's where you really need to focus on isolating Exotic, right? Exotic needs to have no way of getting back into this. So at that point, after Ixo gets this touch, I think Ixo should be focused on getting this boost. And then Relating Wave maybe gets this boost here. Then Exotic is boost starved. Cash can follow through and get one of the opponent's boost, or he can go get this mid boost here. And then that would be where it would go. But it would take a 5-second delay to score. It's not going to necessarily score you a goal straight away unless Itachi messes up. But you can see right here, because Ixo goes for their boost rather than the mid boost, Exotic is able to get that mid boost and turn back in. So if people go for this kickoff in the future, I think it's really important if that cheat. So you need to focus on bumping one, isolating the kickoff taker, right? And then that leaves your opponent defending 1v3 for a second. But yeah, that's just something to think about if you're going to go for the bump kickoff. Is it's not in threes, it's not going to warrant a goal straight away, where in twos, that would have been a goal right there, right? Like, this would have literally just been a goal if between Cash and Ixo, they'd taken it in twos. So looking back at the whole series and how it could have gone at times, I honestly think KC have got another gear in them. I thought KC were playing incredibly well, And I think so much of why KC are doing well is because their game plan. The game plan from KC is reliable, it's working, it's consistent, and they can still all play individually better. And that in itself is a scary situation. It's the same thing with BDS. When BDS were in their peak, they could each play average and it would work. And I think right here what we're seeing from KCorp is their average is pretty good, right? It's pretty consistent and at the top level. Same thing's kind of true for Quadrant, actually. Quadrant have a pretty consistent, reliable game plan, and it's why both teams looked really good at this stage. And as we mentioned when we're looking at the stats show reliability within their boost and their movement and their positioning. And then I think just in general, the structure of both teams allows for a bit more creativity and allows for a little bit more execution and allows them to perform at the highest level, but also remain playing at a good level if they're not having a good day. So that would be my general overview from this. Let me know what you think about these two teams. I think both of them likely now, I mean, KCorp guaranteed to go to the major, Quadrant very likely to go to the major, but we shall see whether they can step up another gear still with the full invitational and then when they play on LAN at the major. I'll be interested to see if they've got another level in them still of individual execution.